Welcome back to the channel. Today we're going to look at 4 simple IFR mistakes. Now I hope that each time you're flying you're taking the opportunity to evaluate what you've done, what you liked, what you didn't like, and then using that to improve your pilot skills, your decision-making skills, and your overall flying. The 4 basic mistakes that I just wanted to talk very briefly about today are planning and briefing, or a lacking thereof, in your approach and in your IFR flight in general. Your second basic mistake is going to be last-minute changes, whether that be en route or especially at the approach end, last-minute changes to the approach that you're flying, the runway that you're using, the weather conditions that are on the ground and around the airport. The third basic mistake is going to be in cockpit organization, not being organized, stuff in the way, not the right databases loaded or plates accessible, or whatever you're doing. If you're doing an electronic flight bag these days or still with older paper charts and publications, making sure that that cockpit's organized, your checklists are organized, and you're good to go. The fourth mistake is going to be in not, simple mistake that is in not keeping that airplane stable, your airplane stable while maneuvering, especially in IMC, single pilot without an autopilot. What I mean by stable is we don't want excessive sync rates, we don't want to be banking too much, and we don't want to be flying too fast, descending too quickly, those kind of items. So those would be my 4 simple basic mistakes and ways that we can kind of get ourselves painted into a corner or into some trouble with IFR flying. From my other videos, tools to carry, survival gear to carry in your airplane. Fortune favors the prepared, and planning is what's going to get you through things. It's no different with the IFR, and it's a really important aspect of it. So the video that's been playing here as we're talking about this is a recent approach of mine into Halifax International Airport in Nova Scotia, and we'll just take a bit of a look at some of the things I kind of wasn't really happy with and didn't quite get right, and we'll see which of the 4 basic simple mistakes I still managed to get myself into. So my approach and the start of this video started with me just receiving clearance for the RNF 05 approach into Halifax. Now, this is simple mistake number 1, last minute changes. So I guess that was the second one I gave on my list. I feel like I had done a very good job at planning and briefing and making sure everything else was squared away, but I destroyed that first step with last minute changes. So suddenly I'm planned, I'm set, I'm prepped for runway 32. I had good look at the airport before even leaving the ground, procedures around it, feeling fairly confident and comfortable with what's going to happen. Checking the weather well in advance on the way in, and got early clearance for the RNF for runway 32, and everything loaded, the approach briefed, and we're all set and ready to go. Interestingly enough, the conditions started improving a lot more than I anticipated. I was expecting about a 500-foot ceiling, and that was raising quite rapidly. By the time we started the descent, we were up to about a 2,500-foot ceiling, so into marginal VFR conditions if you're under the clouds. The winds changed as well, and they allowed for, and I was presented with the option of doing an RNF 05 approach into the airport. Now this was very tempting from an efficiency standpoint. I'd been in the airplane for almost 4 hours at this point. We've burnt lots of fuel. I've got a busy day still ahead of me, and suddenly I've been presented with a runway and conditions that would allow for that approach, and it's going to cut like 20 minutes of flying off of my day. So I had to do a quick calculation on the winds, determine that I could accept it, which I did, but now all my planning and all my briefing has been spoiled by a last minute change. So mistake one, mistake two, or in this case, mistake two, that last minute change has undone my simple mistake number one, which is my planning and briefing. I've painted myself into the corner, and I've now suddenly got myself into a bit of a rush. So as I said, 3+ hours to get ready. Here we are in the descent, and we've just thrown everything out the window, and we're starting from scratch again. Now, luckily, my simple mistake number three, which would be cockpit organization, I've got a pretty good handle on that, and I didn't have too much difficulty at all in changing the plate, getting the GPS set up, getting to my new waypoint loaded in. So, pat on the back for that one. However, because I cut off so much time, I ended up with the airplane high, not a lot of time to descend, so it wasn't, panic stations, but it's certainly, I've got to get us coming down quite a bit more rapidly now, and maneuvered onto our new approach. I kept the airplane stable, point number 4 there, but I would say just, we're using an 800 foot per minute descent, and quite a large reduction in engine power, keeping in mind not wanting to shock cool those engines. So it was kind of right on the edge, and it would have been really easy for number 4 to become a big problem. This is all being done, for me, single pilot without an autopilot. So obviously we want to be really careful here that we don't end up putting ourselves into a really nasty situation. As I said earlier, in this instance, it was actually improving conditions and better conditions that sort of led to the difficulties that I had, which would seem kind of counterintuitive for an IFR flight. And obviously, once I'd broken out of the cloud, it basically has become a VFR flight at that point. So there's no massive safety concerns here. However, it really does highlight how quickly you can make wrong decisions or get yourself into trouble. And that's why I wanted to talk about it, and why I think it's important for us to take the time to analyze our flight and see what's going on. So the reason that I started making some of my simple IFR mistakes was due to some pressures of efficiency and improved weather conditions at my destination airport. Those improvements led to that last minute change. That last minute change spoiled my planning and my briefing, and luckily for me, I didn't have a problem with the organization side of things, but it could have been an issue, and so could the keeping the airplane stable portion have been an issue. And I certainly have got the airplane in a uncomfortable position before when flying cloud breaking approaches, basically in airports where you've just got say a north-south runway, you're approaching from the south, the winds are massively favoring landing in the opposite direction, but the ceiling's 3,000 feet, so all you need to do is break through the clouds, then you can cancel the approach and finish VFR. Instead of flying an extra 50 miles to turn around and shoot the approach back on the runway that favors the wind, you just take the tailwind on the approach, because again, I'm cloud breaking. I'm not actually going to be landing in this direction. I have done that in winds that were so strong, and I'm not even actually landing at that airport. I'm going to the one 15 miles away, so I didn't even put the gear down or anything else. I was just thinking about efficiency and speed and getting there as quickly as possible, and basically I ended up flying the approach so fast that for me it became very uncomfortable. The airplane wasn't feeling nice and stable. It wasn't in that normal configuration that you would have for landing. And after a couple of large maneuvers onto the final approach fix, I'm starting to not feel very comfortable about what's happening. So it can really happen in a hurry. I hope you found this helpful discussion and giving you something to think about and chew on. I hope you're evaluating what you're doing, and we'd love to hear in the comments about simple mistakes that you've made or kind of rules of thumb that you have for your flying, whether it be IFR or VFR, to try and keep yourself safe and to improve your skill set. As always, practice makes perfect, but we need to be practicing, analyzing, and correcting the things that we're not liking. Stay safe. Stay tuned for more content. Please remember to like our videos and subscribe so you get information on upcoming videos. I hope you're getting lots of flying done. Happy tailwinds, and we'll talk to you all soon.